I'm Brad. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I originally grew up in central Illinois, and I'm an engineer. I've been involved in designing and developing jet engines now for 35 years. And I became a believer in like the young pre-high school age through my mom in a Church of God in central Illinois, Peoria, Illinois. And so throughout my high school and college years, I can't say I was a serious believer until later, the last year or two of college. I got involved with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. Came to Cincinnati after I graduated from college and got involved with a church, Presbyterian church there. And have been growing in my Christian faith. Met my wife there at that church, Marla, she's sitting there. And so we've raised our family in Cincinnati in a Presbyterian church, and then later it was a Bible church. And now we're just recently in the last, I'd say, year and a half or so, members of a Spirit-filled vineyard in Cincinnati. So the ministry of the Holy Spirit is brand new to us. To me, for sure. My wife, not quite so much. She was converted during the Jesus Revolution in a Pentecostal church, and attended what's the denomination? Assemblies of God Bible College, and was a Bible teacher, and so she's much more familiar with the ministry of Holy Spirit, but not me. And it's brand new with 2 years, and the way it all started is pretty miraculous.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Well, we're desperate for healing for our daughters. We have identical twin daughters. They're 26. They've suffered with anxiety, depression, mental illness, psychosis since they were kids. Since we really noticed it, I would say, in preteen years. Got worse until one day in senior year in high school during finals week, one of our daughters came home psychotic, and we didn't know what to do. And her twin sister has struggled. You don't know what the diagnosis: bipolar disorder, psychosis. They're both very, really musically gifted. We're now learning we think they have some kind of prophetic ability that the enemy has been twisting since they were little. We're now don't quite understand that, but we're starting to learn that. And I ended up at Ken Feucht conference in Snellville, Georgia in July of 21 through just a series of events that caught me off guard. We had gotten to that point. Both our daughters were back living at home in 2020, and then our marriage was falling apart. I had started drinking way too much just to cope. I just would not come home until late after work, and I was working crazy long hours. And then in May of 21, we have, our longtime small group friends and everything. I was having breakfast with all the dads, and a couple of guys started talking about this guy Ken Feucht. You hear this guy Ken Feucht on Eric Metaxas? Latest wild healing story, and I just all of a sudden, I didn't know what it was, but now I do. The Holy Spirit came on me, and I said, "Do you think my daughters will be healed?" And one of my friends said, yes, they will be healed. And then when we walked out to the parking lot, it hit me again. And then this realization came to me, like, this is not only mental illness. This is demonic. This is a spiritual oppression on our daughters. And I had never really considered that. And I didn't know anything about it. And the friend that I just told you about, he he said, Brad, I've thought that for a number of years. I could feel it. I could just feel it when we would be over at your house. He goes, I just didn't know what to say to you. So that was the beginning. That was May of 21. And then July of 21, I was separated from my wife. I was living on my own. I woke up in the middle of the night. This is a true story. And oftentimes I'll listen to podcasts or whatever. I just picked my phone up off the table by my bed and I looked at it, and it was Eric Metaxas' show, Ken Fish. It was just there on my phone. So I played it, and he's, and I was like, what in the world? I didn't know what I was even hearing, and so
wait a minute. Your friend had said something about Eric Metaxas and Ken Fish verbally, and then you see it just pop up on your phone.
Yes.
Was it a YouTube notification?
It was a podcast.
Okay.
The podcast app on the Apple iPhone.
Okay.
And it was, instead of when I picked the phone up, the podcast was open on my phone. And that was a Thursday, 3 a.m. or something. And he said, so where are you going to be next? Oh, I'm going to be this weekend, tomorrow, Friday, or whatever. This weekend, Friday and Saturday, I'm going to be at Snellville, Georgia. And I didn't. So anyway, I finally went to sleep, got up, went to work the next day. About noon, it was lunchtime, and I said, I just thought came in, I wonder where Snellville, Georgia is. Well, it's a north suburb of Atlanta, a little more than 7 hours from Cincinnati. So I somehow figured out where the church was. I can't remember. I must have Googled something. I just walked out of the office and got in my car and drove to Snellville, Georgia. And I was just, I had never experienced anything like that. Mm. But one thing happened. He was talking about yoga, and he was talking about the common pains that people have, especially women. And he was describing what one of our daughters was suffering from. And I won't go into more of that, but he it was during ministry time. He said, anybody here, I just shot my hand up, and that's my daughter. You just described my daughter, He's like, well, is she sitting here? Is she here? No. And he goes, well, that's not the word I got. It wasn't for your daughter. I was like, man. So, but I saw all the ministry kick off. I saw all of that, and I thought, that's what's wrong with my daughter. One of the things, anyway. So I went home and I contacted the Orbis office by email. I'm not even sure who was answering my emails at that point. I was looking for someone who could pray for her, because I described what I just told you. And there was a series of emails back and forth, and a friend of ours, when I told him the story, he said, hey, there's a Vineyard Church in Cincinnati. They're into that Holy Spirit stuff. Let's go there. So he took me there, and that led us into a journey. Now we're regular members there and have seen tremendous things happen. So that's how it all started. I can go on. There were just miracle touches of the Holy Spirit on my life, and then it started happening in my wife's life. We were reunited about 6 months later, after being separated for a year and a half. Then one of the most profound things that happened along the way to me is I ended up in Washington, D.C. The Sean Feucht, Sean Feucht's worship thing. Mm-hmm. He was doing a thing on September 11th, 2021, on the National Mall, Pray for America. So I thought, wow, let's check that out. I'd never even heard of Sean Feucht, but Pray for America on the National Mall. So I went, and I was overcome. And I just felt drawn to walk right up to the front. There's who knows how many thousands of people were there, and I was just overcome during the worship. Fear go, Holy Spirit come, burn like a fire, blow like the wind. I was overcome. And all of a sudden somebody walks up to me and says, I'm walking through the crowd praying for people. Can I pray for you right now? Yeah. And what do you want prayer for? And I described what is happening to our daughters. And he laid hands on me, and I just collapsed to the ground. he started praying for my daughters. And then, you know, I just started screaming and crying out to God. And anyway, we stood up and, you know, talked a little bit, and he said, Brad, he said, when you get home, you see what God just did here. And so when I got home, I wasn't even living at home. I called and I went over to the house. And prior to that, our daughter had not even come out of her room. I mean, it was, I don't even know how long, weeks. She was so afflicted by mental illness. She just wouldn't even hardly come out of her room, just to maybe get something to eat or go to the bathroom for long weeks. And I walk up to the porch, and she sees me coming. She opens the door. Hi, Dad. Hey, how are you? Completely dressed, her hair washed, makeup on, and a big smile on her face. And, you know, she came up, gave me a big hug, and I could see my wife standing behind her, just going like that. And so then my daughter goes back into the house, and I said, Marla, what happened? She goes, I don't know, Brad. It's like the light switch turned on. And that was one of the things that started. There's a story after story after story about once every month or two, something like that would happen. We're still in a major, I don't know what's the right word, struggle with the enemy, though, for our daughters. We've seen tremendous breakthrough and success, and still struggle. Mm. But that's what started. That's why we're here. And then, since that time, I've learned to pray for them. I've confronted demons in my own kitchen, both my wife, my daughter, both my daughters. And we're just pressing in and seeing breakthrough. Mm. And so we want more. We want to learn more. We want to untangle what the roots are. We don't really understand why this has happened to our daughters, but we're making progress. A number, actually, Manny Kim ministered to me at another Kenfish conference in Apple Creek. That was a miracle of divine appointment at 5 a.m. in the hotel lobby. And our family's been reunited, and we're pursuing healing and deliverance now for our daughters.